What's going on, y'all, and welcome back to another Etheria restart video. Today the module forge is finally here, so I want to talk about all of it in terms of what you should be doing, how the event works, what are the best pieces to go for, left side versus right side, substats, all that stuff we're going to cover in this video, as well as my overall thoughts on the entire thing, because I've seen already a lot of mixed opinions on module forge. So we'll go over all of that. Thank you so much for tuning in. Yeah, let's go ahead and just jump straight into it. So module forge is here, and if you weren't aware of how this works, essentially, we're going to be able to pick a left side piece of gear and right side piece of gear pretty much once a month. They've straight out said that this event is going to be a reoccurring event, and they want it to be, I believe they said, like once a month. So that's very nice, just in terms of getting two pieces of gear. One on your left side, that's going to be your, your helmet, transistor, etc. And the right side, you have those three modules that are all the same as well. There are some extremely big differences in terms of like what you should be going for. And then, for example, on the right side, of course, right, the main attributes are going to be extremely important. And then on the left side, all the main attributes are kind of preset in terms of your helmet. It's always attack. The transistor is always HP, and then the wrist is always defense, right? It's just a flat stat. Less impactful than, let's say, something like a swift rush on effect accuracy, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. So just keep in mind as well, guys, we're going to cover this chart as well, that there are differences in terms of what can roll individual substats. So the right side obviously can roll everything. However, the left side, there are going to be some extreme examples in terms of like the helmet can roll a lot of offensive subs. We'll cover all that here in just a second. I don't want to overwhelm you all just yet. But if you want to skip ahead, I'll probably have these all timestamped. And then on the right side, just remember, I've already seen some people make this mistake multiple times, but I'll cover this again later on in the video. But remember that whatever you roll as your main stat, for example, if you roll effect accuracy on the main stat, you cannot roll effect accuracy again on the substat. That's something that a lot of people kind of just understand because you've probably played another game, very similar gotcha game with exact, the same type of gear rolling. However, if this is your first gotcha game, that could be something that you just weren't aware of, right? So I've seen a lot of people kind of getting confused, and then other people kind of giving them crap for it. But this might be someone's first like gear rolling gotcha game, so we got to cover all of that. Anyways, once a month we'll be getting two pieces of gear. I'll tell you my thoughts on like if that's good, if that's bad, overall thoughts. Next thing I do want to talk about real quick, and we're gonna go through a piece of gear ourselves together. But keep in mind this energy shard. This is going to be gained. They even tell you right here, go to threshold. You get 20 per Inferno run. Now I haven't tested Hell 4 if that's the same. I'm assuming it's probably going to be the same amount of shards, but if anyone wants to let me know, most of us I think are at least Inferno or getting near it, so no reason for me to not farm something that's Inferno, but most of y'all should be getting probably it should be 20 energy shards per threshold clear. All right, next up, let's just choose a piece of gear, and I want to talk about recommendations as well as how this is going to work. So let's go ahead. My suggestion, right, would be typically just identify what you're kind of looking for. I highly suggest in the beginning to get your DPS, units on point first, especially the newer you are. DPS is kind of what's going to get you through a lot of checks, as well as in particular, right, DPS are typically harder to gear as support units can get away with both less lattices as well as less gear. So let's go and just pick a offensive piece, and I would highly suggest to go for something 12-piece set as well, something like Onslaught, Momentum, or Kenai. And I know in general, like things like Kenai I think are very high demand, so I might pick something like this, especially, and this is something else to keep in mind, lately I have been farming a lot of Aurora, as I am a bruiser player, and I'm starting to gear mostly PvP now. I've gotten pretty much all my PvE on point. If you guys are still focusing on PvE, then keep that in mind. I'll talk about that here soon as well. But for example, I'm farming like a lot of Bloodbath and Bulwark, as well as like Strive. So I'm going to probably try to shy away from those as well. Momentum is available in Aurora as well. So something like Kenai that I haven't been able to farm a lot of is a little more enticing to me. Now, that's just a minor thing. You can really just go for whatever you want. Even if you're farming Aurora, you still want Momentum and you haven't found a good piece, go ahead and pick that. Once again, this is going to be happening every 2 pieces every single month. So you don't have to be extremely careful, but you do want to keep in mind, right, that you still want to go for the best bang for your buck, and that's the overall goal here. So let's go ahead and pick like a helmet, and I'm going to talk about the substats and why I'm looking at the helmet here. So if we take a look at that sheet I showed y'all earlier, guys, the helmet, which is going to be slot 1, right? I believe that's slot 1. As you guys can see here, we can roll attack percent as well as crit rate, crit damage, and speed. So we can have all 4 offensive subs that you want to look for on a piece. And as well as they even highlighted here, right? Remember I told y'all you can't roll the main stat as one of the substats as well. So since the helmet has attack flat, we can't roll that there. But that does mean for like a pure offensive unit, so think of things like D-Ting, Yelly, Lilium, if we're just talking PvE, because remember in PvP, there's some other stuff. Sometimes you can build Lilium like as Bruiser, you can build Yelly as a Bruiser on Bloodbath, and then maybe, you know, sometimes some people are going to be going for more speed. Maybe they even want a few like HP or defense attributes. And that might depend on what you're going for in PvP. Let's just stick to PvE to keep things simple here. And let's go ahead and just pick a helmet. Keen Eye will be what I'm going to go for here because I can always use more Keen Eye gear, and we can take a look at how this works. So there will be 100, so I'll probably pause this and we'll roll some stuff together. But before I even do that, I just want to talk about what we're going to be looking for once again real quick. So pulling up the sheet, on the helmet, we're going to want to look for attack percent, crit rate, crit damage, and speed, right? You could go for something else if you want, and depending on how much currency you have available, you may have to settle for less. But in the beginning, let's be optimistic and try to get the best substats. And so right here, we can see we rolled with crit rate and crit damage, which is very nice. We're probably going to want to lock these, and it looks like that's going to give us 400 of these. What do they call them again? Energy shards. It's going to require 400 to lock both. If we only wanted to lock one, it's going to be 200, and then if we lock nothing to try to roll all four, it's going to cost 100. And that kind of makes sense. They do want to make sure, you know, the more substats, the more perfect piece of gear you're going for, it's going to be harder to roll. Now, that is quite a lot of energy shards. I don't actually know. Let me think. If it takes one roll at 100, and then we lock these both, if anyone is really good at like statistics, I believe there is a chance, right, that rolling raw, depending on how many you have, could be safer. But what I'll probably do just to keep things safe is I probably will go ahead and just lock these and just save up 400 per roll. And then by that time, since helmets can't roll too much in terms of stats anyways, I mean, the fact that we have two, right, we're just looking for attack percent and then speed, it shouldn't be too hard. Now, that is, you know, there is RNG, and the unlucky you are, the longer it might take to get your perfect piece of gear, especially when we look at the right side piece of gear as well, which we're going to talk about here in a second. But just as an idea, I probably will just stick it, make sure we stay safe, and then, you know, we have plenty of time. Just make sure you take advantage, do a lot of threshold farming this week to get your points. You essentially get to double dip. I know it is a little tricky, and I'm going to cover this at the end when I go over my overall review, that a lot of times you want to farm shells during the week, and then you save up all your stabilizers and stuff like that for stabilizer capsules and stability for the 2x event, and that's typically when you want to farm thresholds. However, I think this is an exception, and I think to get one piece of gear with your preferred substats is going to be worth it to farm thresholds here and there to get, you know, your piece on point. Now, how much you want to farm and how much it's going to take, that's going to vary depending on your luck. And one additional thing is you cannot, you know, it's not going to give you perfect substats in any particular roll, right? I believe after you pick all four, it's just gonna, you just roll it up like a normal piece of gear, and then of course you can hit the wrong sub. So you want to kind of keep that in mind. For example, if you're gonna go for speed, let's say we get a speed here, there's no guarantee it's going to roll higher than our base. So you typically, when we have a 3-speed base, there's a chance you roll into a lot of other substats. So that's an idea that maybe don't pick a piece if that's, you know, you're only fishing for a high speed roll. And for example, on this helmet, right, we don't need a lot of speed. We just want it as an extra substat because there's not a lot of else we want to go for if we're just looking mostly PvE. So that's one good reason that I think a PvE DPS helmet is just safe. You pick 3 to 4 great substats. It shouldn't take too long. I think even getting 4 substats should be pretty easy here. And then no matter what we roll, it should be good because attack percent, crit rate, crit damage. The only bad thing maybe is if it goes like all into speed, but even then it becomes like a PvP piece. So just to quickly recap, my suggestion would be go for a helmet and then go for 4 offensive subs, especially if you're a newer player. DPS are more bang for your buck, and then on the helmet we can hit 4 offensive, you know, substats, meaning no matter how it rolls, it's probably going to be a very, very strong piece of gear. Once again, refer to this sheet though on the screen. Remember, make sure that on, you know, for the helmet we can roll all 4 offensive subs, but you cannot roll your main stat on the helmet. The attack flat is the main. And then on the right side, we're going to talk about here in a second. If you want to go for something else, just make sure, let's say, for example, you're going for a wrist wheel. You cannot get attack percent, and you cannot get crit damage. The only thing you get is crit rate and speed if you're going for something offensive. For defensive stuff, just make sure as well, you know, some pieces cannot roll effect resist in case you guys are looking for that, like the helmet. And then for the slot 2, the transistor, if you're going for something offensive, remember, you can't get attack percent, but you can get crit rate, crit damage, and speed. And then maybe if it's for like a bruiser, you go for something like HP percent as well. Just keep in mind, like, defense percent is slotted out here. So just refer to the sheet and make sure you guys know what can and cannot roll. So in terms of the right side piece of gear, this is going to be a little bit trickier one. I think you can really just go whatever you want. For example, for me, like a bloodbath on defense is just very, very juicy. Things like Rahu, things like Mizuki, units like Holden, I need a lot of this gear. Even though I'm already rolling this, the fact that I can get, you know, my defensive bonus as well as fish for some very good subs makes this enticing even if I'm already farming it. That being said, though, I think for a lot of y'all, something like a triple Swift Rush effect accuracy is going to be strong. Just remember what I said earlier. So if we pick this and we roll the subs out, and by the way, I haven't decided what I'm going to pick yet, so I'm not going to take you through the next step, just as a heads up. I'm still going to wait and decide a little bit longer while I farm up some more crystals here. But I would suggest something like this. Swift Rush on effect accuracy is very, very strong. You can even go for something like maybe like Time Weave. This is like more PvE. However, for PvE, this can still be extremely strong depending on what kind of player you are. But just keep in mind that if we, let's say we go for effect accuracy with something like HP, defense, and then speed, just as an example, if we want like a lot of speed, this is going to all come down to RNG. This is, think of it just as a piece of gear that has 4 substats already rolled, so it has very high potential. But if you just miss hitting that 1 in 4 speed every time, then, you know, it's going to be a 3-speeder Swift Rush, which may be for a lot of y'all not what you need. So for example, on the left side piece of gear with the 4 offensive subs, something like that, no matter how it rolls, is going to be, you know, just good in general. So if I pick something like my Bloodbath right side piece of gear with defense percent main stat, then I could go for something like crit damage, speed, and even something like HP or flat defense, right? Just remember you can't double dip, so we can't go defense bonus again. But the right side pieces of gear can get every substat. Once again, showing you all the chart, you can see here on the right side, everything can work as long as it's not the main stat that you choose. You can't double dip on the main stat. So I think that's another thing that keep in consideration. I still think this is very strong for a lot of players, because some of y'all may not even have a triple Swift Rush effect accuracy with some speed. So if that's even just a baseline upgrade, go ahead and go for it. I think that's good. You can go for something like Time Weave on same thing, effect accuracy with speed substat. Just remember that if you're fishing for high speed on it, let's say you already have a lot of these with like 6 to 9 speed and you need something like plus 12 or higher, that's going to be kind of rare to get. So I would highly just be, you know, just be careful on what you need and keep your expectations realistic. So choose either for PvP or PvE. Bloodbath right now is very strong, but I do expect this to get toned down in the future. You could once again go for something like a Momentum Keen Eye with attack percent, crit rate, or crit damage. I would just stick to something with a very strong main stat. So don't do anything like flat attack. No flat stats at all, guys. And then if you're going PvP, be careful on things like, you know, FRES. Just make sure you know what you're doing. But in general, if you stick to a percentage, like for a bruiser, let's say defense for Rahu, like I was mentioning, Holden, or HP for Tiamat, anything like that could be great. Just pick the right substat for them. Typically for bruisers, Bloodbath is great. For offensive units, things like Keen Eye and Onslaught, Fury are going to be better than Momentum for PvP, because Momentum, you can't always get the debuffs you need. But yeah, just take it from there, and just be careful on the speed, and remember you can't double dip on the main stat. All right, I think I rambled a little too long there, especially on the right side piece of gear, which I'm going to wait on. But just make sure you pick something that has a, you know, a popular set, and the more universal it is, the better off it's going to be. So for DPS, things like Keen Eye, Fury, Momentum, Onslaught. And then for right side piece of gear, things like Swift Rush, Time Weave, or if you're going PvP, things like, you know, Bloodbath are going to be very, very viable. As long as you pick something like that, remember, avoid the flat stats and keep your expectations realistic, especially if you're going for something like a speed substat. Just remember, it's still going to be RNG in terms of where the substats roll. Now, overall, I think this is a very good event. Just 2 pieces of gear that we get to pick the main stat, as well as try to fish for perfect substats, is going to be very, very nice in terms of just helping you kind of gear out your entire roster. Is it a perfect event in terms of like getting all the gear you're ever going to need? Of course not. But I think in comparison to other games that are in similar genre as Etheria Restart, this is very good and very welcome, especially 3 months into the game. So I've seen a lot of people complain for various reasons. Things like, you know, yeah, they didn't roll speed on their gear. They spent too many resources trying to fish for something they couldn't even roll in general, like their main stat. They try to get, like, they rolled a crit damage right side piece of gear and try to get a crit damage substat. You can't do that. So just go into it knowing what you're looking for. My only complaint, or even minor gripe, would be the threshold farming. Is that maybe it's a little expensive to roll. I'll let y'all know how I feel about that as I gather more feedback. You guys let me know in the comments too, in terms of like any critiques on the event. You know, I do think it's very good overall though. And I think it should just be considered to be something that's going to help us get some nice pieces of gear. Just keep your expectations always curbed. It's not meant to give you a perfect piece of gear. However, some of you guys will get your perfect piece of gear from this, and the fact that it's 2 pieces of gear every single month, I think kind of just view it that way. My only thing is, you know, farming thresholds I like to save for the 2x events. So having to do this with our daily crystals instead of doing something like shells is a little bit of an annoyance. But honestly, to get, you know, some very nice pieces of gear, I think it's worth it. So I'll give you guys more thoughts as I progress on the system. But thank you so much for watching. Hopefully it helps some of y'all out, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace out, everybody.